Peace to the planet. You know what it is. Adisa the Bishop chilling. It is back to Money Mondays, right? And we're trying to do what we say we're trying to do: get our money right, get a real understanding of what's happening. And our guide, our financial Sherpa, if you will, is going to be David Frazee from Demystifying Silicon Valley, Demystifying Wealth. Thank you so much, David, for meeting us back for another episode of Money Mondays. I've been getting amazing feedback. People are sending me questions. I know people are sending you questions, and I really appreciate your time on this because it's a weird time right now, and everybody's wondering what to do with their money.
You know, a lot of Sherpas die on the trip up or back from Mount Everest, so not sure that's happy to help, but you know, maybe
We're still here. It's good. It's good.
and they don't get the credit. Like Edmund Hillary gets the credit, but not Tenzing Norgay, the guy who actually did it, right? You
I
know,
know.
being a Sherpa is underappreciated. But anyway,
But you won't be.
no, I
Not on
actually
Bishop Chronicles, I promise. You know.
well, just to share a story, since last week's episode, it's always the most emotional thing I talk about when I do this. But I got two or three, well, I got two emails and then a text. So I didn't know how to count that from people who watched it, talking about their emotional experience of watching last week's episode. So one of them mentioned they had to pause it multiple times. They were crying. They were thinking of their mother and her struggles as a single mom. And for the first time had sympathy and understanding to the plight that she faced trying to do all the things she did for them and having forgiveness for the mistakes. You know, like she would go gambling, she would buy lottery tickets, and you know, the child, now an adult, had anger about that. Like, that's money you wasted, but she was just trying to cope, you know, and make decisions such as it was that are mathematically not optimal, but in her mind, they were rational. They were things she was trying to do. And so that's a common story. It's a common reaction when I do this. I do sometimes these programs in my home, you know, for people locally, and I've had people cry during that session when we talk about what the money scripts are.
It is heavy, man. It is heavy. Hold on one second. I left my tea. 1 second. I can't be without my tea. You know what I'm saying? It can't happen. I need it. I need it. I need it. Hold on, wait. All right, hold on. We've got technical difficulties due to phone and insanity. Hold on 1 second.
You know this is taped live because this is evidence right here.
If you had questions, let them be answered now. Okay, sorry about that. I need my tea. Okay.
This is not fake like the moon, like people think the moon landing was. By the way, we really
got to talk to my cousin.
We really did go to the moon.
My cousin really believes that. But continue, sir.
By the way, a quick story off topic. I was on a plane with someone who said the moon landing was faked, and I said, "So you're one of those people who thinks the moon is real?" I'm a scientist by training. I don't have patience for that. Anyway, let's get back to money. Let's get back to money.
Cash. So, I wanted to kind of, you know, and I'm saying this like totally for myself because again, I'm starting from, you know, pretty much zero. And so I'm trying to get a lot of understanding of, you know, what we're dealing with. And so as we get started, like if you were a real Sherpa and we were going up, right, I'd need to know what the basic rules of dealing with the mountain are and what to expect on the way. So what are some of the basic rules, right, that this is going to take?
Well, so here's how I'd like to organize the next few sessions, if this works for you. So last week was a bit heavy and went a little bit long, honestly. I was going to try and keep it an hour, but that's hard for me because there's a lot to say. Let's keep this week a little shorter and just talk about the tools. So these are the pickaxes and, you know, the oxygen equipment, what we need to go up Mount Everest, if we're going to keep the analogy going. So today's the tools, and I'm going to simplify it for you and focus on just three things: stocks and stock funds, bonds and bond funds, and cash equivalents. And so I'll come back to that in a second. Over the next 2 weeks, what I'd like to do is talk about how to assess where you are today, get a snapshot so we can start to plan a strategy that works for you, because it's not one size fits all. We're going to talk about what I call the plumbing, which is the infrastructure. How do you set up a checking account, a savings account? And by the way, it's going to be a high yield savings account, so you actually make some money, not like the 0.1% things the banks give you today. how do you set up a brokerage account, a retirement account? What are these different kinds of retirement accounts? And I know you have listeners in different countries, but I'm going to focus on the United
Of course,
States
right.
because that's what I know. I don't know what the savings accounts are in the United Kingdom,
Yeah,
for example, but we'll talk about Roth IRAs. And I'm going to talk about a concept. I'll foreshadow it today, which is thinking post-tax dollars,
mm-hmm.
meaning if I give you $1 million, if I give you a choice of $1 million or $700,000, which would you want? And the answer is you don't have all the information you need. What if the $700,000 was tax-free?
Right,
What if the $1 million was at the top federal rate, which as of this taping is 37%, but may go back to 39.6 depending upon future
right.
elections and whatnot. Let's say you're in California where it's up to 13.3% on top of that. And let's say it's self-employment income where you're paying FICA, Social Security for yourself, both as the employer and the employee. That may not have made much sense. I'll come back to that if we do a small business class. So in other words, you could be paying over half in taxes. So net tax dollars, meaning the cash I don't have cash with me today, but what you physically get could be like only $500,000. So as a concept, when we think about how do we put the plumbing in the systems and where do we put money, we're trying to optimize what we end up with in cash at the end of this. It's not the most money, it's what you end up with. So that's why we love things like Roths, because just to get ahead of things, it's tax-free when you take it out. Like you don't pay taxes. That's one of the best deals out there. So that's the next 3 weeks. That's the foreshadow. But I saw this quote, and I'm sure someone will Google it and tell me who said it. But if you want to oppress people, give them too many choices.
Right.
And so we're gonna keep this really simple here. There are thousands of things out there, and people will try and sell you whole life insurance, which is a total scam. And if anyone wants to talk about that, maybe we can do it in a catch-up Q&A in the last session. But I'm going to keep this really, really simple. Stocks and funds of stocks, which are collections. Well, I'm going to go through these systematically today. Bonds and bond funds. So bonds are just short-term debt obligations. We'll talk about that more in a few minutes. And cash. Those are the only 3 tools you actually need. If you're really motivated and you want to develop expertise in other areas like real estate or crypto, knock yourself out. It's your money, go crazy. Stick to the basics first. You only need these 3 primary colors to paint the entire universe of wealth.
I got you.
For most people, you are better off spending your time increasing your skills, your income, living your life, traveling, having fun, connecting with your partner, volunteering in your community, real wealth to me.
Yeah.
And ironically, more effort leads to worse results. We want to feel like we're doing something, anything. I just need to do something. Sometimes the best thing you can do is absolutely nothing. You set up the system, turn it loose,
let it be,
and you forget about it. And I do have an example I want to get to today because one of the people who wrote me asked a question about a story I told a few weeks ago about a paralegal who worked in my law firm who put the money in the stock market right before the 2008 crash, and they were upset and threatening. And the question was, where would they be today? So I actually did the math on that. I can go through that sometime today. So the point of that story is sometimes laziness does pay off.
Right.
It doesn't in most areas of life, but this is one where keep it simple truly is your best friend. So that's the way I'd like to organize this, is we're just going to give you a few tools, some of the rules, because you asked about how should you think about this? Boring is good.
Yeah.
You don't want exciting cocktail party stories about your money.
Right. You just want
to look at it every 10 years and say, oh, a little more than double. That's pretty good.
Okay.
I want you to understand that the market average is actually truly exceptional and very hard to beat. I'm going to tell you in the next hour by giving you numbers of how few professionally managed funds have actually beaten just the stock market, which you can do for effectively free. No one beats the market. That's the crazy thing. I want you to ignore your friends and their investing tips. Your uncle with the hot stock tip, just don't.
Got you.
Now, you always have counter examples. I'm going to give a real one. So my son, he's 25 now, but from the age of like 13, he put all of his money he made from his job. He was the head of IT at his school, which is a long story.
Right.
Well, basically, the head of IT was indicted for having porn on his computer, and they had no one that they could hire. So my son was like, I'll do it. And so he really was. But anyway, he took all the money and bought Bitcoin, and he's now worth gazillions because so we do have those stories. They do exist, but don't do that. That's
right. That's like results not typical. You know what I'm saying?
No, it hurts. It hurts me to see how much he has compared to to where I was at that age, but still don't do that.
Right, right, right.
And because 99% of people lose money. And the most sophisticated thing you can do is actually stick to the basics. Understand that the most sophisticated thing is to do the easiest things.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we don't often think about that with money. And most people selling us money instruments or things that are about money, they make money from doing it. So that person selling you the whole life insurance gets paid a freakish amount of money. Why? Because they're ripping you off.
Right.
It should be, I mean, I literally, people that sell whole life insurance should be taken to the public square, tarred and feathered and horsewhipped. Literally,
Hard and
that's how I
tough?
feel about it. And both. Yeah, you could do
All
both.
right. Well, what?
Well, what's the point of tarring without feathering? Come on, man. I mean,
It doesn't.
amateur.
It doesn't have the same impact if we leave the.
It doesn't.
So
Well, just horsewhipping. The problem is that those are all felonies, so don't actually do that.
true.
But people selling you things are making money off of you. You are the
Right,
product.
right.
So be careful about that. And the stuff I'm going to show you is effectively close to free. You can do this on your own with almost no
Okay.
cost.
So let's talk about what a
So
bond is. Let's start there. I remember when I was a kid, my neighbors for their birthday, it was the first time I had heard the word. It was like 7 or 8 years old. It was like 1978. And they were like, oh, my aunt gave me some bonds. And I was like, I don't know what that like sounds like it's money, but not. So it didn't make sense to me. I was a kid, but I still don't know anything about a damn bond. So what's a bond?
okay, let's actually before I do bond, I'm gonna do just I should talk about cash because
Okay,
that's the
okay,
default.
okay.
Cash is cash. The problem with cash is it loses value because inflation, things are more expensive. So what $100 would purchase, 40 years ago, maybe 30 cents
Mm,
of purchasing power today. So
mm,
we don't want cash. So bonds are the next best thing. So I'm going to move up the hierarchy. So a bond, it's just a promise by a government or a company to pay money over time. It's a debt instrument. It's a loan to finance something.
okay.
So the US Treasury issues trillions of dollars of bonds to finance the national debt. Local school boards may issue bonds to finance the new sports
Yeah.
stadium. Notice it's never the actual school or classroom, it's the
It's
arena.
always the arena. Yeah.
Throwing and catching leather balls is really what we need as a
Yeah. It
society.
helps. It helps everything.
That's going to help catch up to China. But it's just a loan to finance something, and you're basically getting, think of it, it's just interest, really. People call it a coupon rate, and it's just interest. So there's a maturity date, which is when is it due? So when do I get my money back out? And if you're buying from the United States government, you can get them in 4 weeks, 13 weeks, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. Different municipal and state or company instruments have different times. So here are the questions. When is it due? What's the rate?
Mhm.
Those are the two biggest ones. Most government rates, as of the taping of this, are somewhere from about 3.5% to up to 5%. Sometimes they're high, sometimes they're low. It's market and it changes like every day, basically. Is the interest taxable? Sometimes, certain bonds the interest is not taxed at the state level, rarely, but sometimes at the federal level. Can the bond be paid off early? Like if the school board raises a bunch of money, can they pay you back early? And also, what's the risk of default? So there are different ratings. Is it AAA debt? Is it single A debt? And most of the rating agencies are pretty bad. We learned that in 2008. But you don't need to get into all the craziness of corporate bonds, AA, single A, municipalities. I'm going to keep this really simple for you. Just focus on U.S. Treasuries, meaning you're buying in the United States government.
Right.
And as of when this is being taped in early 2026, rates are probably going up because of some of the self-inflicted dumbness we are doing in foreign policy. So you're going to make a little bit more. But whether it's 3.5% or 5.5% doesn't matter to the story. Just stick to that because you're basically betting on the US government, which is not going to go belly up. So you may hear Treasury bill, Treasury note, Treasury bond. They're the same thing. Here's the only difference. Are due between 4 weeks and 1 year. Notes have maturity dates of 2 years to 10 years, and bonds are 20 and 30-year obligations. If you hear bill, bonds, notes, just shut down and say they're all
Same
bonds.
thing. Yeah.
The government, you're lending the government money and they're paying you interest.
Right.
That's all it is. Do not
Okay.
overcomplicate this. Don't get into corporate bonds, municipal bonds. I mean, when you're sophisticated, you've been doing this a while, you can look at some of that stuff. But when you're beginning, keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. All you need is US Treasuries. And by the way, the US Treasury website is a
It's
pain to
trash.
use. It
Trash.
is like literally whoever designed that was probably a Russian agent. So, you just when you set up your account, which we're not going to talk about this week, but it's going to be Schwab or maybe Vanguard, maybe Fidelity. They're all, I like Schwab personally, but they're all basically the same. You can just buy a bond fund, and I can give you some recommendations that says we are buying for you on your
These
behalf.
bonds.
A combination of short, medium, and long-term debt instruments. You can cash in, cash out. We'll handle all the work for you. But that's all you need to do so that's what a bond is. A bond is just short-term loan at some interest rate, usually beats inflation, not always, but usually does, has to, or no one's going to do it. And it's a safe place.
Okay. It's safe.
It's not, because realize in a savings account right now, you're probably getting like 0.1%.
Right. Right.
So you're literally giving the bank free money.
Right. When you
They have high yield savings accounts. We'll get to that in a week or two, which is what you should do. Those interest rates roughly track what bonds are. Like I think as of this taping, I've seen high yield savings accounts for like 3.65 up to 4.3%. And it's FDIC insured. For those who don't know what that means, that after the Depression, they set up the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation so that if a bank fails, your money's safe up to a certain
to a certain threshold.
Yeah, I just read a book about the 1929 stock market crash, and we don't want runs on the bank. People coming in with wheelbarrows of their cash to leave. So by insuring it, we stop that, which means your money's effectively completely safe.
Okay.
I mean, if it's not, you're worried about your bomb shelter and your canned goods.
Yeah, it's like real.
So
Yeah.
you got other problems at that point. So anyway, bond, short-term loan, long-term loan with an interest, stick to government. That's all you need to know for now.
Okay. So what is a stock?
Yeah. So a stock is a piece of ownership in a company. For our purposes, we're going to stick to public companies traded on like the NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange. By the way, I'm a venture capitalist. So when I buy stock, I buy private shares of companies before they go public. So stock, you may have stock in your family company. All of that is stock. But when I say stock today, I'm really just meaning stock in public companies.
Right,
But it's just
right.
a unit of ownership in a company.
Right.
They used to have stock certificates. I would show you one, but I don't
Remember
I don't
those?
think I
I
have one.
remember those. I do.
I don't think I have one in the house. I
Yeah.
used to have those. They were all digital.
Yeah.
So when you have stock, you own a piece of an operating company. Companies create value, ideally, they're supposed to. You make money in two ways. One is the dividend. So because I have this share of stock, I get $2.45 this quarter is a profit distribution to me for being an owner. And if you own this through a mutual fund or what's called an ETF, which we'll get to, that gets distributed into your account and you don't actually see it. If you own stock directly, you literally get like a check, from IBM. Here's your $2,000 of dividends. But this, now it's all effectively automated. So one is you get paid a dividend, and the other is you sell stock at a higher price than you bought it. Ideally, if you sell at a lower price, that's a loss.
Right.
So I bought Amazon at $60. It's now at $800. I sold it. That's my profit.
Mhm. Okay.
So that's the two ways you're looking for things to increase in value primarily. A lot of people are really fixated on dividends. If you're trying to be completely safe and are trying to do something called fixed income strategies, that makes sense. But for our purposes, you care about the appreciation.
Okay.
So all dividends you want reinvested. But anyway, when I talk about what the stock market does over time, I'm assuming all dividends are put back in and reinvested.
Right.
Like we're trying to let it roll. Our goal is not to extract money. It's to put everything back and let it keep
stacking. Yeah.
Yeah, we want compounding machines here. Many companies don't issue dividends. They just reinvest in growth. Microsoft didn't give a dividend for 20, 30 years. They just wanted to be a $1 trillion company.
Right.
The only people sometimes ask, well, how much of the company do I own? Like in my world of venture capital, that makes sense. I own maybe 12% of a company. When you're owning Apple, that's a nonsensical question. They have billions of shares.
Yeah.
So even if you own 2,000 shares, don't get concerned about that. You're thinking about, what's the total market capitalization, the price per share. Capitalization is the overall value of the company. So NVIDIA, could be worth say $3 to $4 billion or $1 trillion, trillion with the T.
Right.
You're not concerned with your percent ownership.
Right.
You're just concerned that the company keeps increasing in value. So From our standpoint, unit of ownership in a public company, there are about 6,000 of them on the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. Those are just exchanges. And you're going to be buying these shares through a brokerage account or through a retirement account. So we'll get to that in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So how do you actually buy them? But for now, you're looking for the upside value for the company to increase in value over time.
Right. Okay. Now, how is that different from a fund? Like, what's a fund?
Yeah. So a fund is a collection. It could be a collection of bonds. It could be a collection of stock. There are bond funds. When people say fund, they typically mean stock,
Right.
but it actually could be either.
Right.
So one of the rules is to diversify. So let's say that you want to own stock in the entirety of the top 500 companies. That's what the S&P is Standard & Poor's, which is, the Standard & Poor's 500. It's the top 500 companies. And by the way, it changes. You don't have Westinghouse anymore.
Right. It's
Or
true.
ITT. You don't even know what those companies are. I mean, it as new companies rise up, they come in.
Yeah.
As old companies die, they go out. So it's ever cleansing, ever changing. So it's the top. You may have funds that say we're going to take the top companies in the Middle East and North Africa, the top 500 companies in agricultural technology, the
Right.
top companies in defense contracting. So you can get a fund can have any thesis that it wants, meaning it has how is it selecting? Typically want to recommend funds that or work with funds that are representations of a broad category of the entire economy, which is why I use the S&P 500. Those are the top performing companies. They have international exposure. They're across all sectors. It dynamically changes. So if agriculture is up and manufacturing is down, or if tech is up and defense contracting is down, or they're all up, it automatically is taken into account.
Okay.
Because the overall market performance changes the makeup of who it is.
Okay.
A fund is just a collection. We are trying to get as diversified an approach as possible within whatever the strategy is. And my strategy is the entire economy. Historically, funds would charge you like 1% to 2% in an annual fee and sometimes other fees. Realize the difference between getting 10% and 8% is hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of your life, sometimes millions. So you are paying specialized people to pick for you. Like, who is picking what they think the top defense contractors are? Is it by just a simple formula that anyone could do? Or does it require specialty analysis with people with supercomputers and degrees from Harvard Business School and Wharton? People are charging you a lot of money. So I'm going to come back to that point in a little bit, because I want to get into why you don't want to pick highly managed funds. You would think with all these high power supercomputers and PhDs and MBAs that funds would blast through the market, and you would be completely and catastrophically wrong. Managed funds almost always fail to beat the actual market itself.
Why is that though? Why is that?
Nobody has a good crystal ball. My crystal ball broke a long time ago, right? I mean, so first of all, you can't beat the fees, because a 1% to 2% drag is really impossible to overcome. So let me talk about one other concept here quickly, and because then I can put these two concepts. So there's a fund which could be actively managed or passive. Then there's index funds. So an index fund is we take an index. So for example, an index is just some way of sorting. So the top 500 companies, or the Russell 3000, or the Dow Jones 30, which used to be the industrial.
Right.
Like, we're just going to take those stocks, whatever they are. So no one has to use brain power to say this one, not that one. It's just whatever it is. The 500 most valuable companies, whatever they are, that's the index. Index funds require no advanced computing power or analysis. It just is what it is.
Because it kind of takes care of itself just by existing.
Yeah, like we'll just take every stock that starts with the letter A. That could be an
Right.
index fund. It's a stupid index fund,
Right.
but you
But
could.
do it. Right.
And so because of that, they have almost no fee structure, right? They're just like 0.1% or 0.16%, which is all, I mean, that's the highest you should pay, instead of 2%. Um, if you just take an index fund of the S&P 500, I'm going to give you some numbers here. So 90% of managed funds, meaning where they actively pick, failed to beat the index. And that's over like just a few year period. If you go longer, it's even worse. Since 1993, 2%, just 2% of large cap funds have beaten the S&P 500. And many of these, by the way, you can't actually get in because you have to have a minimum size of like $1 million. Only 1% of managed funds were in the top half of fund performance each of the last 5 years. When you look at the numbers, no one's beating the market. And by the way, that's not taking into account their fees.
Right.
You literally, just with taking a 2% fee, can cut your returns almost in half. I'm not going to do the exponents and the analysis. In the class I teach, I actually give you a table to show you this. But just taking 2% off of the compounding dramatically delays how long it takes you to double, then double again.
Right. No, that makes total
So
sense. Yeah, that makes total sense.
You're making a fund manager in Connecticut, New York, really, really, really rich, but you're not making yourself rich. When you net out the fees, almost nobody beats the market. So the overall market, who would have predicted NVIDIA? Who would have predicted,
Right.
what's going to happen? You don't need to. The market will do that for you, and it is free. And if you don't believe me, believe Warren Buffett. So in his will, and I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast, for his wife, he wants her to put 10% when he dies of the cash in short-term government bonds and 90% in a low-cost S&P 500 index
And just
fund.
let it ride.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here's what he actually says about that. I believe 99% who invest should extensively diversify and not trade. So that leads them to an index fund type of decision with very low costs. All they're going to own is part of America.
Okay.
You are buying the entire corporate power of the United States. Now, I use the S&P 500 because it's easy. There are other kinds of funds, and I'm going to talk about international, domestic, and what are called target date funds here in a little bit.
Okay.
I want to talk, but when you buy U.S. companies, you're buying exposure globally. Coca-Cola has global exposure. Microsoft has global exposure. So you're basically buying the global economy in effect, but focusing on the U.S. There are people, and I'll get to this in a little bit, who do buy. Mathematically, you're supposed to do 64% U.S. and 36% international. There are times the global economy outperforms the U.S. We may be in one of those periods, but I don't like guessing.
No, I like it.
You just want to be exposed to the whole economy. You're investing in the exponential growth of the world. So if you think about throughout most of human history, we had no growth. We're just flat.
Right.
And then we decided, hey, and I've mentioned this before, maybe science is an okay thing. Maybe we shouldn't kill people who think that, facts are facts.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should educate people. Maybe we should educate girls and women.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have technology. The global economy compounds about 11% a year. And that's why the global markets compound, is they are a reflection of the aggregate wealth creation of the world.
Got it.
So that's why it's so hard to outperform, is trying to be smarter than the global economy is hard. So what I'm telling you, here's all I need to say here. For effectively close to free, you can beat all the professional funds.
Just stay consistent. Stay with the fund, with the S&P, whatever.
And I'll give you some choices. By the way, S&P may not be your right answer. I want to get to index funds maybe in but a few minutes here. I want to talk maybe about volatility first, because that's important.
Volatility.
But
because that's what everybody's talking about right now. You know what I mean?
There's like 3 or 4 choices you have, but they're all going to be better. Yeah, let's come back to volatility. So this is time. I'm repeating things because I want these hammered into you. Money you need the next 5 years, keep it safe. So it's going to be a high yield savings account or bonds.
Okay.
And I'll give you the actual strategy in a few weeks.
Okay.
That's money you can't afford to lose.
Right.
Like you need it preserved. So if the market collapses 20%, you're heartbroken because that's money you had to have. But if it's for 40 years from now, go on the economy and just bet it and don't look back. So I'm going to go back to the story I told a few weeks ago, and I have to look at the numbers over here so I get the numbers right. But basically, to rewind, before the 2008 crash, paralegal in my law firm said, hey, husband, I have some money. How should we invest? And I said, is it short-term, long-term? What are you doing? She says, this is for retirement, we don't need it.
Mm.
And I said, just put it in the stock market and forget about it. And I actually recommended they do a target date fund. And I haven't explained what that is, so we'll come back. And so she did. And then I'm looking at my numbers here. The market collapsed 37.2% that year. So if she put $100 in at the beginning of 2008, by the end of it, she had $62.78. They were mad. I mean, like really mad. And we're threatening them. I mean, and this is like, I'm not a professional financial advisor. I'm just a guy who understands how math works. And I said, leave it. Just leave it. You said you need it for 40 years. So I want to answer the question, what if they had left it? So it would have taken them until 2012 to get back to even.
Okay.
So for those years, they're like, the market sucks.
Yeah.
This is
trudging through the mud.
You know, they're like my grandfather in the Depression. Like, you know, the stock markets are all criminals, scam. However, in 2017, you would have gone up to $225. 2021, you'd be at $433. By the way, in 2022, the market did go down, so you'd have lost 18%. And now you're like, oh, did I make a mistake? Maybe I should sell.
Right. Like, no, just hold.
And the answer is don't. At the end of 2025, on December 31st, you would have had $661. And that's investing right before one of the biggest modern crashes. Volatility, it can go up. You don't get like 10.5 or 11% every year consistently.
Right.
Like literally, I think I mentioned this. I had a woman attend my program and her boyfriend was calling me angry. It's like, the stock market doesn't give 11%. That's, you know, I don't even say the actual words they use because it's a family program, but you know, and I was like, I never said that. I said on average over 60 years, over 100 years, over 200 years, over that's the average compound return. But like just to go through since 2008. So minus 37%, plus 27%, plus 14.8%, plus 2%, plus 15%, plus 32%. You know, we had a year that was -4, -18. Like, that's what it really looks like. It's one of these things, but it keeps going up. It keeps going up over time. Why? Because it's based upon something fundamental, which is the global economy. I've said this again. We've had, you know, the depression where the markets decline like 90%, the dot-com crash, the Great Recession, the, you know, Vietnam War, OPEC.
Yeah.
Despite that, we've had 10.5 to 11% compound annual growth rate over 100 years. I mentioned this number. I want to give you the exact number. If you put $100 in the market on January 1st, 1926, so 100 full calendar years until December 31st, 2025. Remember, the market went from like, by the way, the Dow Jones, this is how long ago, the market went from $400 down to 40.
Right. That's massive.
During the biggest crash. Massive. Like 90% of its value was lost. People were jumping out of buildings to
it was a real thing.
But if you left that $100, it would be worth, I'm sorry, I have to look up my number, $2,358,640. $2.359 million if you had just left it.
Listeners, pay attention to that. Pay attention to that. Because like,
so don't do anything. Don't do anything. Let it ride and keep reinvesting. Like when things aren't, you should just have like $100 a month or $1,000 a month or whatever you can afford. Just let it go.
So hey, hold on real quick. When you said that stuff about,
but again, volatility matters because if you need the money next year, you can't afford a 37% drop. That would be catastrophic.
Right. So what I wanted to ask you was, I just got life insurance. Should I get rid of it and just put that money into the market?
No, term life you should
keep.
Term
life, not whole life.
Yeah, whole life is.
I got term.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. No, you need life insurance because if you have kids or you have obligations.
I do.
I'm not. Life insurance, very important. I'm going to do. I actually talk and if you go to the website, I have a link to a guy who has an entire takedown of term life insurance, which is better than what I can do.
Okay.
So if you go into the resources section,
is that for demystifying wealth?
Demystifying wealth, yeah. Go to the resources page. There's good stuff there, but I'll just refer you to him. But in a nutshell, the way whole life works is they give you a guaranteed amount, which is very small, and they take the overage and they invest it. So this compound interest, they keep. That's why your insurance broker is making like thousands of dollars for every sucker. I mean, every customer that he's able to sell.
Right.
Like, think about how are they able to pay the all those commissions unless they're making a freak ton of money on it.
They're over here stacking it up. Okay.
Yeah, and by the way, your bank is paying you 0.1%, and guess what they're doing with your money? They're investing it.
They're investing it. That's real. Okay.
So basically, I'm not here to be I mean, I grew up in Kansas. Nebraska's a neighbor, so I'm a bit of a Warren Buffett fanboy. But another thing he says is the stock market is designed to transfer money from the active to the patient.
Okay.
Think about that.
Okay.
People that want to move and day trade and do all these things, they're paying money to the people who just want to hang out and wait the long term.
I see what you're saying. Okay, that makes total sense.
So, and and ironically, the smarter you are, the more active you want to be. And men, I say this with all love because I'm one of these guys too. We always want to micromanage. If we could just do something, if I could just do something, I can make this work. I can make it happen.
Yeah.
And women kick our butts in investing because they will set it up and let it go.
That's real.
On average.
That's real.
So temperament, IQ, patience, these things are not always equally correlated. Sometimes they're negatively correlated. But if you're thinking long term, just put it in the global economy and let it go.
Okay.
Just let it go. Okay. I talked last week, and I want to give you some numbers on this because I didn't have off the top of my head, because I wanted to be precise on this. This is about, the way we started last week was, well, hey, the market's down. Should I buy now? Well, the answer is you should always buy now, because if for the long term. But timing the market is an illusion. So let me give you some stats. If you missed just the 10 best days over the last 30 years, your returns would be cut in half.
No kidding.
Like if you could have made $1 million, you would have made 500,000. This is people waiting to see when the market's about to turn.
Right. So you just
I'm
need to
waiting
chill.
till it's at the bottom. So you never actually hit the full bottom. You wait till it does one of these things and comes back up, and then you get back in.
Yeah.
That's a mistake. If you miss the top 20 days, cut it by another half. So that means if you didn't hit exactly those 20 best days, your returns would be cut by 75%. 78% of the best days are in a bear market or in the first 2 months of a market. That's if people are trying to time, those are days you actually miss. Timing is not only not the key to making wealth, it is the way to destroy wealth. Just keep investing every month, whatever your strategy is. Stay fully invested, reinvest all your dividends. Don't take it out. Don't take it out. I know there's always that temptation. Getting a first-time mortgage. I want to take my money out of retirement. Don't do it. By the way, if you truly, and I'll talk about this when we get to the red zone, like if you're in enormous crushing debt, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And I don't begrudge you.
No. I hear that.
But don't interrupt compounding. Don't interrupt compounding. The illusion of timing. People that say they can time the market. And by the way, you'll see people with like these technical charts, which is like, those are horoscopes for men.
Yeah.
Women. The joke is, a woman. I don't mean this to sound sexist. A female friend of mine said, we have horoscopes. You guys have technical trading and fantasy sports.
That's fair. That's fair.
But you can't time this stuff. You can't. There's too many billions of individual instances happening simultaneously for you to time it. So just keep investing. And again, this is because of the global power of the economy.
So before we finish up, what is an ETF?
Actually, can I get the target date funds first?
Yeah. Target date index. Yeah.
There has been a trend to make investing as easy as possible. So first of all, I've talked about the S&P 500, but the truth is that's not always the right answer depending on how old you are. So as you get closer to retirement, you want to have less in stocks and more in bonds. Again, why? Because you need the money soon.
Right.
And it's never all in bonds, because even when you're 65, you have to still live another 30 years. So there's all these formulas that show you should have this much in global, this much in US, this much in bonds, this much in maybe cash.
Right.
That's too hard for most people.
Too hard for me. I just showed up. I don't have time for that.
Instead, what people do is most of the major institutions like Schwab and Fidelity and Vanguard have created target date funds. So they say, okay, this is simple. Pick the date you're going to retire. Is it 2060? Great. Buy target 2060. And when you do that, it automatically changes. If you go to like Schwab, just Google glide path, GLIDE, target date glide path. What you will see is you're generally like 60, 70% in US. You're like 30%, give or take, in foreign, and maybe 0 to 10% in bonds. And then over time, as you go from 40 to 55 to 65, you increase your bonds because that's safe because you now need the money. So preservation is now important. And you decrease the equity side. So they will automatically do this for you.
Okay.
This simple recommendation I would give to most people is, but if you want to micromanage, go crazy. By the way, I have everything in stocks because I don't do this. I'm violating my own advice. I'll just admit being a hypocrite. But just buy a target date index fund. For most people, that is the easiest way. And you should never pay fees above like 0.15%. Be careful because some people call themselves a target date fund because it's become popular, but they charge 1 or 2%. Make sure you definitely look at that.
Okay. Okay.
So if you're going to retire in 2075, pick Vanguard or Fidelity or Schwab 2075. They will do all this stuff for you.
Okay.
You do not need to further diversify. Realize what I just said. So they have international, they have US stocks, they have bonds already built in. They have the entire global economy. There's probably like, 2 or 3,000 stocks represented in the aggregate here. You don't need to further diversify. It's already fully diversified.
Okay.
So the quick advice is a target date fund just says, when do you want to retire? We do the math for you. And this is based on Nobel economics winning mathematics.
Okay.
Like it's good
It's
stuff.
good stuff. All right.
It is a little too conservative for my personal taste, but it's correct mathematically.
Okay. So what is the ETF to close this out? Because I'm curious to know.
Yeah, so an ETF, is a kind of fund. So the way a mutual fund works is like you can only sell at the end of the day. There's certain tax events you have because of, dividends. An ETF is an exchange traded fund, so you can buy and sell at any time of the day. Historically, ETFs weren't that useful for people because, you couldn't automatically keep reinvesting. There were no target date ETFs.
Mm-hmm.
Today, that's changing, and it'll change over the next 6 months even. So the general rule used to be, and this is complicated because this is one of those, this depends on your tax situation, consult a professional, because literally this is all about the taxes more than anything else.
Yeah.
It used to be mutual funds were fine in your retirement account. I haven't talked about that yet. That's in 2 weeks. But if you're doing it directly through a brokerage, you probably want the ETF instead. Things are changing. I have a slight preference for ETFs over mutual funds.
Okay.
99% of people, the difference is negligible or non-existent. And if you're doing it in your retirement, it really doesn't matter. It effectively doesn't matter. I mean, I don't want to get angry emails from people with mathematical analyses, but for what we're trying to do, it's not an important distinction. But if you're going to be putting money into your own personal account outside of a retirement account, and that will make more sense in 2 weeks, ETF probably slightly preferable, especially if the automatic investment, like where every month you can buy another $100, could just be set to be automated. It'll be slightly better. It's a tax question.
Okay.
But it's just a different form of fund. But the interesting thing is all the major mutual funds now have close counterparts, if not exact counterparts, that are ETFs.
Okay. Well, listen, this has been fantastic. Gonna have you come back again for another Monday. You've given me a lot of clarity today. Let me just be really clear. Like, you've given me a lot of clarity because all these things you hear, but they go and they pass straight through because I don't know nothing. Now you've given me a really good baseline of understanding stuff. I'm sure that's the same case for a lot of the viewers because every time we do one of these things, I get some messages in. So I know what you're saying is hitting and resonating. I'm looking really forward to next week, but also I'm looking forward to you next time you come out. I got to take you by the house because, like I said, mom's worked for Schwab. She got her Series 6. She was doing all the stuff. So I just want to watch the conversation as an ignorant human.
Yeah. Cool. And by the way, I want to give a little few of some warnings here. Today was vocabulary,
Right.
which is kind of boring, but
Yeah.
you have to have building blocks. Like you have to know how to use the oxygen tank and the pickaxe if we're going to do Everest.
Exactly.
By the way, I haven't shown you which account to open to buy these things. Is it a brokerage? Is it an IRA? Is it a Roth? We're getting there. So we're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah. We're getting our baby.
Look, today is just there's 3 simple tools. Just a summary. You got bonds, short-term debt instruments, effectively. You have stock and stock funds in particular, right? And I'm going to show you in the next few weeks where you actually put the money, in what accounts, and how you structure it. But know these things exist.
Yeah.
If you stop watching after today, this is where you should at least know target index funds with the lowest possible cost. Is if you just do that and do nothing else,
Everything.
you'll get a lot of the results. There's more important things you should know still, but
But yeah,
that will save you so much money I'll save you millions of dollars and no whole life insurance.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just glad I got the term. You know what I'm saying? So I'm glad I got the
Yeah,
right
no, term
one.
is right.
I'm glad I got the right
You
one.
need to do that.
Well, man, David, thank you so much for being awesome, spending time, sharing the wisdom. Everybody, do not forget to visit Demystifying Wealth and Demystifying Silicon Valley. Right? If you have questions, you can ask me, but you should definitely go to the site and ask him, right? Because he's the guy, right? And so I'll see you next week for more Money Mondays. And I appreciate your time and your wisdom, man. All right. Thank you so much.
See you next Monday.
All right. Peace now.